Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the March 18th, 2025 meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Santa Maria.
Here.
Councilmember Snedden.
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Present.
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman.
Here.
And Mayor Rouse.
And just so everyone knows, Mayor Rouse is in Sacramento this week, so I am filling in today as Mayor Pro Tem for the meeting. All right, so we are on to ceremonial items, and we have the Red Cross month. And may I have Mr. Strojek and Ms. Galloway come to the podium. Well, hello, good to see you today. This is Red Cross Awareness Month. So I'm going to read this to the record and have you make a few comments. So thank you for being here. So whereas the American Red Cross was founded in 1881 by Clara Barton, whose compassion prompted a greater mission to ease and prevent suffering. And whereas for the past 140 years, generation after generation has stepped up to fulfill her mission, delivering emergency relief and critical care across our country and around the world, bringing out the best of humanity in times of crisis. And whereas volunteers, blood and pallet donors and supporters give back through the Pacific Coast chapter, delivering shelter, food, and comfort during disasters such as the mountain fire, providing critical blood donations for hospital patients, supporting service members, veterans, and their families, saving lives with first aid, CPR, AED, and other life-saving skills, delivering international aid, and reconnecting loved ones separated by global crisis. And whereas the City of Santa Barbara joins communities nationwide this March in recognition of the heroes of the American Red Cross, whose unwavering commitment alleviates suffering and advances the noble legacy of Clara Barton, who said, "You must never think of anything except the need and how to meet it." Passed and adopted by Mayor Rouse this March 18th, 2025 as Red Cross Awareness Month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Today is the last day our flags will be up and down State Street. We put up every March, first couple weeks, because it is Red Cross Month. Our operation here in Santa Barbara has been going for many years. It is 90+% run by volunteers. So everything you see going on is usually a volunteer out doing it and such. So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very important organization. All right, Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. And now we are on to the consent calendar. Are there any items that any member of the council wishes to pull? Not hearing any. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to an item on the consent calendar? Not seeing in chambers. Are there any online that would wish to pull a consent item?
No one.
All right, so with that, there are no members of the public. I will open it up for approval of the consent calendar.
Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem. The clerk needs to read into the record
sorry.
the ordinances.
Getting ahead of
and
myself.
resolutions. Thank you.
We have item 2, loan to the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Barbara for a new affordable housing project located at 15 South Hope Avenue, ordinance adoption. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving a loan agreement with the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Barbara and the amount of $1,450,000 for development of real property located at 15 South Hope Avenue to be used for permanent affordable housing to be secured by a deed of trust and a 90-year affordable control covenant imposed on real property, and authorizing the Community Development Director to execute such agreements, subject to approval as to form by the city attorney as necessary, provided that if the city's application to the California Department of Housing and Community Development for funding this project through the Local Housing Trust Fund program is approved, the loan authorized herein shall be rescinded. Item 3, lease amendment with Breakwater LLC, DBA Breakwater Restaurant, located at 107 Harbor Way, ordinance introduction and agreement. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the waterfront director to execute an amendment to lease agreement number 25399 with Breakwater LLC, DBA Breakwater Restaurant, deferring 3 months base rent with lease terms ending November 30th, 2030, commencing upon the effective date of the enabling ordinance. Item 4, subject contracts for environmental and construction support services for De La Vina Street Bridge Replacement Project, resolution and agreement. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24-066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to appropriate funds for the De La Vina Street Bridge Replacement Project. Item 5, contract for construction of fiscal year 2025A project and contracts for construction support services for fiscal year 2025A, 2022B, and 2023C pavement maintenance projects, resolution and agreement. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24-066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to appropriate local surface transportation program grant funds for the fiscal year 2025A pavement maintenance project and program support. Item 6, grant agreement in the amount of $947,850 with the California State Coastal Conservancy for the City of Santa Barbara Wildfire Resilience Project, resolution and agreement. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara authorizing the Parks and Recreation Director to enter into a grant agreement between the city and the California State Coastal Conservancy for the City of Santa Barbara Wildfire Resilience Project, and adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24-066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to increase revenue and expenditure appropriation by $947,850 in the Parks and Recreation Department fiscal year 2025 miscellaneous grants fund for the Wildfire Resiliency Project. Item 7, Library Department acceptance of lunch at the library 2025 grant, resolution. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24-066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to accept a grant in the amount of $39,042 funded by the California State Library. And item 8, license agreements with beach rental concessions, resolution and agreement. The recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24-066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to increase revenue appropriations by $68,583 in the Parks and Recreation Department fiscal year 2025 general fund for the waterfront concession license agreements.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And so we already went through, is just double checking again, is there anybody that wishes to pull an item to speak on it? Nothing's changed, and I didn't have any public comment on that. So now we can move to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Moved by Member Harmon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Gutierrez. And we have put the vote up.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Harmon, seconded by Councilmember Gutierrez to approve the balance of the consent calendar.
Motion passes unanimously with Mayor Rouse absent. And Madam Administrator, I had your light on to speak. Did you have something you wanted to speak to?
No, I hit the button accidentally. Sorry,
Oh,
I'm having computer
perfect.
issues over here.
Just wanted to be sure.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
All right, so now on to a report from the Finance Committee. So I will take that. Today, the Finance Committee heard the annual comprehensive financial report, and I just want to take a moment to tell the public that this is a very comprehensive report. It looks back at the entire last fiscal year, so it's fiscal year 2024, and a lot of work goes into that from our staff, not only putting the report together, but on a daily basis, every day, making sure that we account for all of our revenues that come in, as well as our expenditures, and how we have the internal controls to make sure they're being appropriated correctly. And this year in particular was an outstanding report because we received no comments, not even on controls. So we didn't have any issues at all, which is very rare even to have. Sometimes you have one control issue that comes up, but it was an outstanding job on behalf of our staff for that. And we've had an outstanding certification for the last 36 years by the state of California, and we have all the confidence that that will continue on for 37. So that took place today, and that was approved as part of the consent as well. So with that, I'll move on to general public comment. I do have one general public in chambers, but you did not leave a name. So is there anybody in chambers that wishes to come up and speak during general public comment? So just come on up to the podium. I see you, Ms. Inda. And this is for items not on today's agenda, but under the purview of the City Council. And you have 3 minutes.
Mayor Per Tem, council members, this is Jackie. Sorry about not putting my name on that. I'm here again speaking on behalf of Casa de la Raza. Our community center has been working with a lot of different folks impacted by the issues of custom enforcement being around our majority minority protected class districts and in areas throughout the region. And I'm coming here actually giving you an update. CASA is working with several nonprofits who have seen numbers decrease of people coming into health clinics and to receive legal services for fear of being maybe targeted or isolated. We are going to be partnering with our neighborhood clinics so that people still remain able to receive those services at CASA. And also the Legal Aid Foundation has now partnered with CASA to be there once a month and also provide resources. It's important for people to understand that CASA has always been a safe haven. It's been there for over 50 years, providing a space for advocacy, for mental wellness, and for everything that can possibly happen in the space. The space comes alive almost every single night for people. In our community, with all of the migrant issues, our students are also impacted. Today, we saw a walkout that CASA participated with our students at Mecha at Santa Barbara High School, where hundreds of kids marched over to the school district and came down to Plaza de la Guerra, speaking to their losses, their fears, and how they've been impacted and how their families have been impacted because of separations or trying to prepare for the unknown. That is a horrible experience to imagine, being in high school and having to figure out how to take care of the younger kids in the family or explain those situations. And so I constantly am reminded that we need to continue to work with our councils to be able to provide more resources and more education on family preparedness and getting those red cards out into the community. That's really what our students are asking for, is that education and that those informations become policies that all local jurisdictions provide throughout our cities and our regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Inda. And there are no more in chambers, so Madam or Mr. Clerk, are there any public comments online for general public comment?
No hand raised online.
All right, I'm getting off easy today. All right, so we are now going on to council committee member assignment reports. Are there any members of the council that want to report out? Member Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I first want to just say congratulations and thank you to the Red Cross. I volunteered with them during the Thomas fire and the debris flow in some of the storms throughout the years. And it's really a great group of local people that really care about helping their communities and people in trouble. And other than that, I attended, oh, actually, I missed out. I missed out on the youth council meeting last night because I attended the Housing Authority's graduation ceremony with Mayor Pro Tem Freeman. But other than that, that's all I got.
Member Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Of official events, I think I attended the San Roque neighborhood meeting on the historic context, and staff presented to the public on what the project is and isn't, and I think answered a lot of questions, and really excited about that, the grant that was received to research the historic context of the San Roque neighborhood.
Great, thank you. So now we are on to the administrative reports, number 16. The subject annual report on community oversight of law enforcement and work plan. So I see our chief and Ms. Anderson coming up. And when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman and Council. I'm Barbara Anderson, Senior Assistant to the City Administrator, and I'm joined this afternoon by Police Chief Kelly Gordon. We'll be presenting the second annual report on community oversight of law enforcement. The recommendation today is to receive that report and work plan submitted on behalf of the Fire and Police Commission. For background, the ordinance that assigned new duties and authorities of police oversight to the Fire and Police Commission includes specific requirements on annual report and submission of the work plan to City Council. It states that the report may include information and input on items such as the Commission's activities during the year, evaluation of the workload and capacity of the Commission to address priority issues, as well as a summary of the number, type, and disposition of complaints filed. The City Administrator's Office continues to work with independent police monitor Hassan Aiden of the Aiden Group LLC. We were fortunate enough to initiate this contract 2 years ago. The initial cost allocation has carried over since that time, and we've been able to engage him strategically over implementation of the civilian oversight system, as well as ongoing best practices and technical training. So we also, in regards to the commission operations and structure, 2 commissioners were reappointed last fall. Commissioner Herlinger, now chair, and Commissioner Hill, vice chair, were approved for 4-year terms. We also held a special recruitment in January due to an unscheduled vacancy, and as of last month, we welcomed Commissioner Lapuz. At the beginning of last year, as you may recall, we introduced a new complaint form and commendation form. This was to align with new reporting requirements and overall best practices. The form is available through the Police Department, City Clerk's Office, City Administrator's Office, and the Fire and Police Commission. The form includes both English and Spanish language. As far as accomplishments relating to the Commission's first annual work plan, I wanted to update you on the key objectives. Commissioners undertook a very comprehensive orientation and training program that was required per the new ordinance. Most of these trainings have been taking place at our regularly scheduled meetings so that they are recorded for future reference by new commissioners for their onboarding. Commissioners have also participated in ride-alongs with both the fire department and the police department. We also reviewed the department complaint process and use of force investigation policy and process. The Commission also received the audit of the Santa Barbara Police Department conducted by the OIR Group and received an update on the status of implementing their recommendations. The Commission still has remaining work in reviewing the current Fire and Police Commission policies and procedures and making sure that they align with the new duties and authorities. We will carry over this objective into this current year. The Commission recently completed the review and update of the tow rotation list and tow operating policies that occurred in January. and also received a detailed overview of the critical incident policy of the Santa Barbara Police Department, which included representatives from the District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Department of Justice. So though we worked to host commission meetings in the community to hear directly from those who have been impacted by the criminal justice system, we still have work remaining in collaborating with all of our constituents on how we continue these efforts and expand our community engagement. Our community-centered meetings last year were hosted at the Westside Community Center, where we discussed e-bike safety and learned about the Rising Scholars Program at Santa Barbara City College that provides educational pathways for formerly incarcerated adults. We also held a meeting at the Daytime Navigation and Workforce Development Center in downtown Santa Barbara, called the Faro Center, where we heard from service providers who support people experiencing homelessness and how they assist people impacted by the criminal justice system navigate their way forward. Lastly, the Commission held a meeting in Chambers where we invited graduates from our Listos, CERT, and Community Academy programs to share their experiences and their passion for what they learned and their volunteerism in our community. So on average, we have about 91 views per meeting, which actually aligns with most of our city advisory groups like the Planning Commission, Architectural Review Board, and Parks and Recreation Commission. The meetings with the highest levels of engagement included topics such as crisis intervention training and the co-response team program, our first annual report on complaints and investigations, as well as use of force, and excitingly, the new police station update. So that was actually our most viewed meeting of all the meetings that we had last year. So commissioners also participate regularly in police and fire department events and ceremonies, and we also work to publicize commission meetings through city media channels. And we actually did an in-depth baseline data capture and reporting to commission members as we work with commissioners in increasing our community engagement going forward. So now the 2025 work plan. So the Commission has adopted the following objectives for this year. Identify and implement ways in which the community can engage more in the work of the Fire and Police Commission. Again, more engagement, meeting people where they are, not necessarily having them come to us, and making sure that we're in thoughtful dialogue with our diverse populations and understanding and bridging that trust and accountability with both the Fire and Police Department. The second objective was to coordinate with city staff to publicize the meetings and ensure that public has access to all relevant data and public meeting materials. Lastly, we have gain a better understanding of the investigatory process for complaints of police misconduct and use of force incidents. So we did provide a general overview of the complaints process, the policies associated with that, but this is really an opportunity to go deeper with the police chief and discuss complaints as they're disclosable by the California Public Records Act. And then lastly, to receive additional training and consultation on how the commission exercises its ability to make public statements. So now at this time, I'll turn it over to Chief Gordon to present the annual report on complaints and investigations, and we'll both be available to answer questions at the end.
Good afternoon. So I'm just going to give a brief highlight. This is not the full extensive report that the Fire and Police Commission received. So I'm just going to give some shorter highlights for all of you on it. I want to start by thanking everyone on City Council, all City Administration, Ms. Anderson, for everyone's support of the Police Department. I think what you're going to see is that, I think as you all know, but is supported by data, that you have a really professional, outstanding department. And, you know, for me as a chief, it is a pleasure to lead such a fantastic group that makes a even better team. And their professionalism, their service to our community, and, you know, we've had a lot of challenges and we'll continue to do so, but I think as you can see, you know, the amount of de-escalation and the amount of incidents that don't result in any type of complaint is actually pretty incredible. So I just want us to lead with that. So very quickly, just a quick review. We have two types of complaints. One that comes from internal, we call those administrative, and ones that come from the community, and those, as you see, referred to as community. In 2024, we had 8 internal complaints, so 8 administrative complaints, and compared to 6 in 2023. And in 2024, we had 8 community complaints in comparison to 20 in 2023. And as Ms. Anderson talked about, we have changed our complaint forms to make them more accessible, more usable. We take complaints in any way, whether it comes in via the phone, whether it comes in via email, whether it comes in anonymously, whether it comes in through the city administrator's office, we take all those complaints. And yes, we do, in fact, still investigate anonymous complaints. So I want to just highlight that fact. So just a brief overview. We talked about this just briefly a couple weeks ago when it came to the budget introduction. But for the year 2024, we had 53,715 calls for service. So with that, when you talk about the number of citizen complaints that we had, which was 8, that means in 99.98% of the calls that officers were on, it did not result in a complaint. So in only 0.02% of what officers responded to resulted in any type of complaint from the community. So I think that's an important thing to highlight. That's over 4,000 arrests, that's over 4,600 traffic stops, that's over 4,000 self-initiated contacts. So I think that gives you a good overview in terms of, we see the number 8, but how does that compare to actually the number of calls for service? And we had an increase in calls for service of about 12% from 23 to 24. So that just gives you that highlight and that high-level overview of how many calls do not, what I like to refer to, result in a complaint. And so just a quick overview of the complaints by policy. The red you'll see, those are internal administrative complaints. The blue are the community complaints. So you can just see a breakdown. I'm not going to go through all of them. And those are just based on what the complaint comes in as. So if someone from the community makes an allegation that an officer gave me a ticket because of my race, right? That would fall under discriminatory conduct. So it's not what they resulted in. Those are tagged as what they come in and how they're reported. So and those are the most, when we look at it, we don't put every one. If there's multiple sections for each complaint, we just use the highest level for that, how we classify it. So that just gives you an idea of what the complaints that we're receiving and what the policy violations that are associated are. So quick overview on how, in the end, once the complaint is handled and finished, what the outcome could be. They could be unfounded, which means we know for sure it didn't happen, right? Based on body cam, witness statements, we know that in fact did not happen. If they're exonerated, that means that maybe an officer did something and the community member didn't like it, but it was completely within policy. So that would be something that's an example of exonerated. An example of not sustained is for some reason, basically you have a community member that says this happened and the officer says, well, this is my version. And there's nothing else to support it. For some reason, we didn't have body cam or we didn't have a witness. Then it might fall into that not sustained category because we can't make a determination based on the evidence whether it occurred or did not occur. And then we have sustained, which means based on the evidence, we have enough to sustain the complaint. So this just gives you a breakdown of the complaints, and in the end, we had 5 that were unfounded, 0 exonerated, 2 not sustained, 3 sustained, and we still have the 6 that are ongoing. Typically, we finish our complaints in, I think our average was it was less than 90 days for the year, but sometimes it just depends on when we get them, when we close them. And a highlight, 2 of those sustained resulted in corrective counseling, and then no written reprimands, no suspension, no demotion, and 1 termination. So it is a high-level overview of the results of those that were founded. And I just want to make one other note. Part of this is also the department's commitment to training. In the last year, We moved our training officer, who is now Officer Jay Duffy, under community accountability. And the goal with that is, so as we see complaints come in, we can also make adjustments to our training if there are patterns of training that we see. Because, you know, one of the things that we do when we issue discipline, it's not just about, you know, issuing a corrective counseling. We also provide training to go with it, because the whole goal is to correct the behavior. It's not to punish, it's to make sure that the employee becomes a better employee, and a lot of that comes with training. So now that we have the training officer within community accountability, we can better align our training needs with that of what we're seeing all the way around. Officer Duffy also looks at, he's one of our use of force experts, he also looks at all of our uses of forces to also make sure that if we're seeing patterns in our uses of forces, that we're realigning our training for use of force with those. Because sometimes, and we've already seen it, there was a particular pattern, and it was actually something, the way in which we were trained in it. And so we now have adapted and adjusted our use of force training accordingly. You know, in 2024, we had 7,641 hours of post training. So that's specifically certified training by the Post Commission. We had an additional section of training that we do through briefing training, training bulletins, and that type of material. We had 960 hours of our CNRT, which is our crisis negotiator training, specific for them, and another over 3,200 hours for our SWAT team. And I bring those two up because those are collateral assignments for our crisis negotiator and our SWAT team. But all of that also then comes back into the patrol and those specialty assignments, because when we have an incident, that may not require a complete and full call out of our SWAT team or our crisis negotiating team. All those skills are still used within those calls for service, because most of those members, you know, whether they're a detective or a patrol officer or one of our specialty teams, all of that specialized training still benefits on all of our calls for service. So I think that's an important thing to highlight, is how all that training and all that teamwork works together. And everyone's skill set works together for successful resolutions and to maintain the high quality that our community expects, and to keep our level of complaints down. I mean, there's, no matter what, we're just in a business where everyone's not always going to be happy. We understand that, and we always strive to do better. And if there are things that come up as a result of our investigations, then we want to make sure that we're addressing them through all of the different avenues that we have, whether that is discipline or training. But we want to make sure we're addressing that and those trends. And available for questions.
Great, thank you, Chief. Appreciate the report. Open to questions. Councilmember Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Chief, just for you, every time you throw that chart up on calls, I just go down the rabbit hole. So 53,000 some calls in 2024. Do you actually track, or if you didn't even track, do you have a feeling on how many calls come in above that 53,000 that you never actually get to?
So we had actually over 130,000 calls come into dispatch.
Okay.
That was, we actually track how many calls come into dispatch that may have resulted in, who knows, someone asking for directions, or it should have gone to another agency. But dispatch received over 130,000 calls for the year. So we do in fact track that, because everything's recorded when it comes in. And those that you see in terms of that 53,000 number, that is an actual call for service where an officer was on a call.
Yep.
Those do not include if we do, say one of our CSI officers goes out to do a follow-up and collect video or something like that, that is not included in that 53,000.
Okay.
So there's a whole nother section of calls where, yes, officers are, you know, contacting the public, but those are not what we consider calls for service. Those are just interactions where, like I said, we're collecting video or other things.
So somewhere between those two numbers, I'll just use the cause of the day. So, you know, there's something going on State Street, and a call is made, and just for whatever reason, it's busy, time of day, whatever it is, and somebody doesn't show up for an hour. Do calls like that time out, or do they still be part of the call data, or do you actually know, so do you have an idea, like with the existing staffing or resources that you have versus the calls like that would actually be a call if somebody was available right now, what that gap is?
So that's a hard one to quantify.
If you had a feeling, I'd take that. Yeah.
I mean, what we do is we do the priority. So depending on what
Right.
they are, we actually track all of our response times based on priority. So like a priority one call would be, something that we would go lights and siren to, right? Something where someone was actively being injured in that moment and requires lights and siren response. So we actively track. We know what our response time is, versus what we consider a priority 4 call, which would be, maybe someone called about a burglary that occurred in their house, a day ago, and they want to make a report. And then, we would send an officer out, but that may be something that sits in the queue for a longer period of time. Or we may suspend it until we have an officer available. But we go through great lengths to try to prioritize and make sure that those get, and this doesn't capture all of the online reports that are made, that we will have an officer call and make follow-ups to. So it doesn't capture, that number right there either.
Yeah, so I've seen the screen. You sit there and people call for the funnest stuff sometimes,
they do.
right? And so, but eventually those time out, right?
No, nothing times out.
Nothing ever times out?
Nothing times out unless we somehow close it.
Okay,
So if it's been an hour and the dispatcher will call back and say, do you still need someone? And they say yes.
okay,
Or we'll have a dispatcher call back after 20 minutes and say, sorry, you're still waiting, Or we'll have a supervisor call and make phone contact and say, is this something that we can handle over the phone or an online report? So we have different ways to make sure that we're handling those. Do we always hit the mark? No. There's times when the community doesn't see us and doesn't know we actually were there. There's always that time because we will get those complaints where, because there was a delay, or we'll get those times where someone will call and report it and then leave and assume that we never showed up.
yep. I wouldn't really call it not hitting the mark. It's just everything is so unique and nuanced that eventually you can't have somebody there every time, every minute of the day. But thank you.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for this. I'll save my comments, but just the one question about co-response. Do we have any numbers on or idea if that's helpful? I'm imagining it is, but if there's any data on that or how many calls are associated with co-response, you do so much with de-escalation and other things, so just any comments on that?
I actually do have numbers. I don't have them with me. But we now have 2 co-response teams. We have 2 clinicians and 2 officers. And I can tell you last month they handled over 100 calls for service for co-response. We do actually internally track it because they don't just respond to necessarily that in the moment call for service. They actually do a lot of follow-ups to ensure that those that maybe patrol dealt with the night before or those that they know are having issues are getting services, because the whole goal of co-response is so that they don't become a 911 call. So they spend a lot of time doing that. They do spend time doing threat assessments when something comes in and we have a concern. So they do a lot of different things, but yeah, they handle typically, I'd say over the last 6 months, depending on vacations or training, anywhere between 100 to 150 calls for service between the 2 teams.
That's really great to hear, actually. Thank you. And then is that decision made during the dispatch time? Does the dispatcher sort of hear the situation and then decide to send a co-response team? Or how is that triage done?
It's really dependent on the call. Our co-response officers are listening to the radio. If they're available to respond, an officer may hear the call and say, hey, is co-response available to join us? Co-response may not be and say, but we'll be there, or an officer may get on scene and ask for co-response. So there's different ways that can occur.
Thank you so much.
There's not just one
Yeah.
particular way that they're dispatched.
It's working.
Absolutely is working.
Great,
Very
thank you.
beneficial. I think if you talk to our county partners, they would share with you that their experiences with our co-response teams is phenomenal. I think that's what you would hear, because that's what the feedback I've been getting. So it's working very well.
That's my impression, so I'm glad to have heard it reported on. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for your hard work and dedication to our community. Just a couple of ideas I want to, run by you. So from my time doing ride-alongs with officers, I observe them after having an incident or call to service, they would have to stop and type up the report of the incident. And I just remember, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like how long it took them, depending on what the incident entailed and how much detail they had to get into it. But with the advent of technology, is it any way at all possible to maybe streamline that process a little better by having it be like voice to text or like audio recording of the description instead of them having to sit down and type it out? Or is that just a requirement that they have to abide by?
There's a lot of different new technology that's out there. A lot of departments are testing different things. We are not at this moment. We're waiting to see really what's going to work or not work. There's all sorts of different technology that comes at a very, very steep price for, analyzing body cam footage and putting it into a report. But the problem is that I or the officer is going to have to go testify to that and has to make sure that it actually is in fact the recollection and what they remember. And that can be very difficult. So there's a lot of different upcoming technology. There are things that we are looking at. I just came back from a conference, but it's really determining what's going to fit and what's going to fit with the price tag that's attached to it as well.
Okay.
And we have a lot of young officers that are in training that actually have to learn how to write reports and be able to do that. So that is also part of that training process at this point. Most of our patrol officers at this point have less than 5 years on the job. Most of them actually have less than 2 with the amount of hiring that we're doing. So part of that is that experience and trying to figure out what works as well.
Okay. Yeah, I just noticed that I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for them to take a few minutes to process what they just experienced and making sure that they wrote it down. The other idea or issue that I wanted to bring up was every now and then I hear people or I read comments online about dispatch and how they react to the person calling them. There's even been a couple incidences where the person claimed something that I thought was very serious. So I wrote to them and said, hey, can you email me your experience? And then they don't. So to me, that's an indicator of like maybe they're not telling the truth as to how dispatch reacted. But do you have a record of people complaining about dispatch and how they react to people when they call?
So anytime anyone makes us aware that they have a concern, whether it's with an officer or dispatcher, we go back and look at all those tapes. If there was misconduct, we will address it. Sometimes there is a training issue. But a majority of the time what we find is there's typically a misunderstanding on the community's part, or what they're putting out is not what happened. We had a complaint that the other day that I think you all received about the accusation was that dispatch did not dispatch when they should have. And after we listened to tape and actually talked to employees, we found out that it did not come in through dispatch, that the person was, home in Ojai when they called to have an officer dispatched. And so we also then take the time to call the reporting party back. And, in this case, it was a parent that was concerned about how his daughter was treated. And we went through great lengths to make sure that he understood, she understood, and if there was a training issue that we address it. So, everything that comes in through dispatch is recorded. And so we go back and look, and if there's an accusation that someone called dispatch and we didn't dispatch someone, we go back and listen to the tapes. A lot of times maybe they called 911 and it went to CHP or it went to someplace else. And if for some reason we did not, then we will look at that. If it's what we consider something that needs to be investigated, we will handle it that way. But if not, if there's a training issue, then we address those issues. But it doesn't matter whether it's an officer or a dispatcher, like, we take all of those complaints very seriously. And like I said, the officers just don't have body cam. Everything that dispatch does is recorded.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I also really appreciate all you do in this report. It's incredibly helpful. My questions are not on the substance of your work, Chief, or the work of your department, but more for Ms. Anderson as it pertains to the Oversight Committee itself. As you remember quite well, the process of getting this committee up and running was really an effort in increasing transparency and trust between our police department and our community more broadly. And it seems to me, especially as we keep getting these reports, that it's at least it's working in combination with all the other efforts that our chief and her department are doing. But I'm wondering if you can speak to the efficacy of this committee vis-a-vis the purposes that we had when we put it in place. Is it working from your perspective? Would you say that the committee members would feel that it's working? And are there opportunities for us to look at how this committee works in its support of the police department, its consideration of its work to do better? I guess that's what I'm sort of not, what I'm maybe missing. It's like, is it really doing the job that we had hoped that it would do? And the answer may very well be yes, but I'd put it to you.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman and Councilmember Harmon, it's a great question, and one that we reflect on, especially when we're coming to you and presenting the annual report and work plan. I think the intentions of the Community Formation Commission, they felt were not completely incorporated into the formation of the civilian oversight system. So there was that tension early on. But I think what we've been able to do is be transparent about the data that wasn't disclosed prior to what was happening on the national level in terms of police reform. So there was a lot of just not knowing what our department was dealing with, and now we know much more. So it has absolutely accomplished that key objective. I definitely think our commissioners have a variety of perspectives. We have been so fortunate to have a membership that is diverse in terms of their lived experience and is contributing that to their questions, their openness in terms of interacting with the fire and police department. All commissioners have been comfortable with participating in ride-alongs, and as you know, that's a really transformational experience, and they have brought that into their dialogue and questioning of the departments. I think it has been communicated to us a little bit of a frustration when something is in the news in terms of officers and complaints that we're fielding, but yet the commission doesn't have access to that information at that time to have dialogue in a public forum. One is that it's the Police Officer Bill of Rights we absolutely need to adhere to. There's other laws and guidelines that we need to follow to make sure that we're protecting confidentiality, right? And the purview and the authority of the commission is very specific to what's disclosable, because we do have a small department. We have a low level of complaints, and all of that needs to be protected. So there has been some dialogue about how we can work together for them to feel like we are really deeply understanding what the complaint and investigation process is like. And so that is our work objective for this year, is opportunities to really go deeper on some of the complaints and investigations that are disclosable. And honestly, having that dialogue where we're in training and we're learning with each other. So, and in our February retreat with the Hassan Aiden and the Aiden group was very much this dynamic of understanding what their personal goals and objectives are in terms of their volunteer leadership on the commission, as well as bridging that understanding and information sharing with both the departments. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it really does, and in some ways it's kind of more of an existential question than an answerable one, but that's really helpful. And I see that this, on the 2025 work plan, this bullet about identifying ways to engage the community, I'm very interested and glad to see that that's an element that the commission will be undertaking, because maybe that's sort of the next iteration of what their purpose is to continue this conversation and ensure that it doesn't just sort of go away until the next time it comes back, but is something that we continue to engage with. mean, I
And
assume-
Councilmember Harmon, I think in interacting with the commission, and especially our chair and vice chair, it really is how we can find opportunities outside of a public forum and a very formal meeting like this one, where we can engage commissioners maybe 2 by 2, right, with populations that would feel less comfortable coming into City Hall, less comfortable coming into a community center that is a government community center, right, and having that interaction. I think we definitely are committed to facilitating more of those conversations and that community dialogue. A lot of that will be, again, not recorded, not live streamed, so people may not witness us doing it, but we will absolutely report back on our next annual report how those interactions are going, what we've learned from them. And again, the department does an incredible job with community engagement, and so it's really building on their efforts as well as what we can do as an extension of supporting those departments. Yeah.
Thank you. I have just a couple questions, great questions from my colleagues. First, it's dealing with homeless population, and if you could remind us what the approximate percentage of calls goes towards homeless, and then the second part of it is with the opening of the Faro Center this year, how has that impacted positives, negatives, what it might be in terms of opportunities and engagements with that segment of the population?
I actually do not have the number, that percentage with me today.
20% last year.
She remembers. I do not remember off the top of my head. It was 20% last year. Clearly, we have our population has gone up in terms of our on-house, so I think our percentage will continue to grow. We know we see it not just anecdotally. We know what the officers are seeing, and we know we're dealing with some of our community members that really have the highest acuity and needs, and we are dealing with them multiple times. And I think that's to be said about co-response, our community action team, our patrol officers, really working together to identify and really work through some of those issues. So.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, sorry. I just wanted to add to that. We are not seeing a decrease in the calls for service since the Faro Center opened. So we have been tracking those numbers. Obviously we wished for a different result, but I will say the individuals with higher acuity needs are the highest utilizers of emergency services, and that continues to remain the same. We don't have enough tools in the toolbox to really handle the higher acuity need individuals. We don't. Nor do we have enough capacity with our licensed practitioners, with beds to refer them to. And as of right now, all the services that we provide to unhoused related to substance abuse and mental health disorders are voluntary. We have involuntary options, but even that threshold is very, very high that needs to be met for us to do that. And that is only 72 hours with, the ability to extend that for another 72 hours. So we're still dealing with the same issues, even though we have more resources in terms of downtown Santa Barbara available to us.
Thank you for that. I know it's not what we want to hear, but it does provide a benefit because we're getting those individuals in the system. It takes a long time for them to build the trust and then access those services. And it's all the more important to where I think the chief started with this is the training, because those co-response and others, it's a big part of it because we don't have necessarily the mental health outside or other resources to that level for those high level of service. So having all the training and everything that you want to do in the report is essential for serving those segments of the population.
And I'll add another statement. Our officers and the licensed clinicians that join them on the co-response team and beyond, so the community action team especially, know most of these individuals by name. They know their history. They know what will create a positive interaction, what will create a negative interaction. They know the resources that we've exhausted, the programs they've been exited from, where the next referral can occur. And that has been the strength of our internal homelessness response team, because we're constantly communicating with each other about what is the next step that we can take, especially with these individuals that have the higher acuity needs. So I cannot thank the police department enough for the level of information sharing that we have, and the licensed clinician that join them, they give us a level of detail that we haven't had prior to that.
Great, thank you. So now I'll open it up to public comment on this item. I don't have any speaker slips in chambers, so I will ask if there's any online.
No one online.
All right, there is none online, so I will turn it over to my colleagues for any comments. My queue is not popped up. Member Sneddon, go ahead and we'll figure that out.
Thank you. I had a follow-up question and then comments, but any update on the fire part of the Fire and Police Commission?
Councilmember Sneddon, we balance, the want and desire for more information and data as it relates to the police department with the work of the fire department. So we've had many overviews and presentations of the work of the department itself. Anything that's timely and important, we bring to the commission. I will say the requirement of the ride-along of the fire department as well as the police department, again, has been a really transformational experience for our commissioners, and they're constantly wanting to know more. So we do have a quarterly report on calls for service for both departments, which yields a lot of questions and inquiries from our commissioners. And again, we've done everything from working on the Regional Fire Communication Center to now upcoming, we have Fire Prevention Bureau because of what's the questions and concerns that we've been getting for community members for the Southern California fires. So we're consistently working to make sure that we're highlighting both of the incredible work of both departments.
Thank you. I just thought it'd be good to get an update on that one too. So just in my comments, I just your department continues to be just professional, outstanding, exemplary. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you to your whole department. I think this was something that was difficult in assembling and had sort of difficult goals, and the proactive nature, it makes it so clear and transparent, and I think it did, to me, accomplish the goal of highlighting all that's going so well in the department. And when it wasn't so out in the open and with the commission, it was, we took it on faith, but it was for the community. This just gives that transparent touch point that the community gets to know and interact with the department more. And I just think it's really significant that you're able to highlight, and the commission's able to highlight what an exemplary department you continue to lead. So I really want to thank you for that. You have significant decreases in the community complaints, and the numbers were already so low to begin with. It was hard to see how that number could go down so much. It's really clear you're taking this, the whole department, taking it seriously and acting proactively. There's so much to be proud of here for you, for your department, and for us by extension that we get to share in that. Really particularly commend the co-response, the forward thinking on that, and building relationship with community. And I just look forward to the continued strength of the transparency and staying ahead of things that I think just keeps us in the forefront. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I echo all of that and my appreciation and gratitude both to our department, Chief Gordon, all of your team, just continues to be incredibly impressive, and you're just exactly the leader that we needed, and so grateful to have you here and for what you're building and what your team is building. So really appreciate that. Ms. Anderson, for your leadership on the commission, and really taking this on, as Councilmember Sneddon said, and it was complex and continues to be complex, and I so value your engagement with the work of oversight and transparency and engagement and community building in all areas, but particularly as it pertains to our police department and our community. I think just for me moving forward, I continue to be thinking about what the future of the Fire and Police Commission is, what it can be, what it should be, and I think in the coming years, sort of its next iteration is really critical for the future of the entire exercise. To me, how they move forward to build what the relationship looks like both to our department and within the community over the next few years, it really is going to be cemented in the next 2 to 3. And so it is something that I'm also thinking about. You know, what is it that we want its mission to be as we move forward, especially as we see these incredible numbers from our department, and I have every confidence it's going to continue to trend in that direction. What is the role of this commission moving forward, and what is the relationship going to look like? And so I don't have answers to that right now. I don't think anyone has the answer, but I say that only to say that these are issues that I care about very deeply, that I've thought about very deeply for a long time. And I think there's still work for us to do around this. And happily, it looks a lot different now. I think I say that with an incredible amount of gratitude, but I don't think the thinking is done on it. So I appreciate that you're all so engaged, that the commission is so engaged, and look forward to the conversations that are going to come on this. And there may be more opportunity for us as a council to engage as well, sort of in the development of the mission statement more broadly in its next iteration. So I just say all that with thanks.
Thank you to my colleagues. I'll just be brief to wrap up here. There's no action item on this. And so, one, thank you to the chief and your department. The statistics, as my colleagues have said, speak for themselves. It's rather amazing that with a 13% increase in calls for service, that your number of complaints from the public side has gone down from 20 to 8. That's a huge success, and to have only 0.02% resulting in a call in looking into them is quite amazing. Come a long way since this was first started back in 2019, 2020 in that range, and it just speaks to the professionalism of our department and your leadership, Chief Gordon, and Ms. Anderson as well. You've been here putting the commission together, working with them on the work plan. I know you spend a lot of time on this, and the two of you together, it's been really outstanding. And I'll just like to add that the new police station, having that construction underway is only going to add to the success that we're having and give us more tools. One, for community outreach, I think it was a good move to include as part of the new police station the community room in there, so that will be another opportunity to have that community engagement in a place that will be welcoming and will build those relationships. So with that, I just want to really appreciate the leadership of both of you in the department and all of the department staff, from officers to management and non-sworn as well, because there's interactions there that reflect on the department each and every day, and goes a long way. And it doesn't happen by accident. It goes from the top to the workers themselves in there and building that culture. So thank you very much. And with that, since there is no action item, we will move on to item 17, the general plan annual progress report. I see Mr. Gullett there. And just for a bit of housekeeping for my colleagues, make the meeting run a little more smoothly, we'll hear the report, we'll do public comment, and then we'll come back and you can do questions and comments at the same time. Mr. Gullett.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman and council members. I'm Dan Gullett, Principal Planner in Long Range Planning and Special Studies in the Community Development Department. For this item, I'm presenting a brief summary of the 2024 General Plan Annual Progress Report. I want to recognize especially Jillian Ferguson, the staff planner, for coordinating with many throughout the city in drafting this report. This report outlines our city's progress toward the community goals set forth in the general plan, with particular attention to...
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, can we just go back and have the clerk read this into the record before we begin?
Yes,
Thank
sorry,
you.
growing pains here. Can we have this read into the record, please?
Item 17, subject 2024 General Plan Annual Progress Report.
Mr. Gullett.
Thank you again, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman. So the purpose of this hearing is for council to receive the 2024 General Plan Annual Progress Report. This is also referred to as the APR. This provides updates on progress toward community goals. This report must be reviewed and accepted before submission to the state, and these are due for all jurisdictions by April 1st of each year. Because City Council is considered the legislative body, this must be presented to City Council. In years past, this has been on consent, but Council asked for this to be on the administrative agenda a couple of years ago. We also took it to Planning Commission, and I'll share some of their comments later on in the presentation. This is annual state mandated requirement for all cities and counties. It keeps the community informed about general plan implementation and presents key data on policy and program performance for the previous calendar year. So this is focused solely on 2024. Also included is information from our housing element reporting. This is also due by April 1st each year. This tracks progress in meeting housing production goals. It uses state standardized forms, mostly tables, and the state's instructions for reporting. And it allows state agencies and local agencies to identify trends. As a reminder, the general plan serves as a long-term blueprint for our community development. It guides housing, transportation, infrastructure, and environmental policies. And the state provides periodic updates and guidance. This is a living document, and it is updated from time to time. I am going to focus my presentation on policy implementation and housing production data. Also included in the APR is a lot of information about capital projects that were completed in 2024 and started in 2024. General plan updates and code amendments in 2024 that were completed. The housing element update was completed and certified by HCD last year. Also the climate action plan and municipal code chapter 2244, which requires some street improvements associated with new development, including sidewalk widening and dedication. General plan updates and code amendments that were in progress in 2024 and continue. The adaptive reuse ordinance, which the City Council and Planning Commission saw at a joint hearing last year. Short-term rental ordinance. We are authorized to hire a new project planner that we expect to be starting in April that will be working on the short-term rental ordinance in earnest. We're also talking to consultants for potential consultant help for that. That is a priority for 2025. The creek buffer ordinance is ongoing, and two elements of the general plan that the state is requiring us to update. By January 1st, 2026, we are to have the open space element updated. And the safety element is always required to be updated in conjunction with a housing element. There's no timeline on that, but it has to be done with a new housing element. And I'll move to housing production and RENA progress. So the regional housing needs allocation that was included in our housing element required the city to provide for 8,001 new units based on projected growth at different affordability levels. This is the projected need in 2031. Just for context, this is about a 20% increase in the total units we have in the city today. This also required new policies and programs to help meet these housing needs that are scheduled as part of the housing element in the housing plan. Our progress toward this sixth cycle RENA, we have 592 total units to date, 204 in 2024. We're well behind our rate to get the 8,001 units. To hit 8,001 total units, it would be a pace of about 1,000 units per year. Affordable unit production, the total 4 very low-income units, 85 low-income units, 14 moderate-income units, and you can see the production in 2024 next to that. We're doing much better with production of above moderate units, 489 units and 150 in 2024. In cycle 5, we came very close to meeting our above moderate unit RENA, but again, we were not assigned lower income unit RENA in cycle 5. So this bar chart shows the city's progress toward the six cycle RENA. About 5,000 of the 8,000 units are considered affordable units. So these are units that typically need to be subsidized that aren't provided by the market. So those are the very low, and moderate units. The above moderate units are a lot easier to be built because the market does that without subsidy or requirement. 2024 trends for housing production. 163 new applications were submitted in 2024. 1,500 total units were included in those applications. It's a significant increase from the previous year. Couple of reasons for that. One is builder's remedy. That's about 450 of those units. And another is the Macy's redevelopment at 3805 State Street. That's about 689 units. Those aren't what we typically see in a year. They're kind of a one-time developments. So we don't expect this kind of trend to continue. 113 projects received building permits, and with those, that's the 204 housing units added in 2024. And 110 of those units were accessory dwelling units, so more than half of our units, and this has been the trend we've seen since 2017, is a lot of accessory dwelling units. This shows that there were a bit more applications submitted than units permitted with accessory dwelling units. So this is a snapshot in 2024. Part of this is that an application was submitted before it was completed in 2024, and it may still be in progress. And as we've seen in past years, there's up to 30% of applications submitted that aren't ever completed for whatever reason. Some takeaways from our 2024 trends. ADUs dominate. 89% of applications are ADUs. Again, this is typically 1 unit per application. And of course, larger multi-unit projects drive unit count. So that's 1,351 units are included in projects that have 5 or more units in them. And again, production is well below our RENA allocation at this point. The housing element does have strategies for increasing housing. Some of the housing element programs that will be coming online this year, we're working on this year and next year. Objective design and development standards. So that was adopted by council in January. That'll come into effect on the 27th of this month. So we'll be interested to see in how that plays out. The adaptive reuse ordinance. This is a change of use of something non-residential to residential. We again discussed this with City Council and Planning Commission last year and are looking at liberalizing the zoning for these types of projects and even allowing unlimited density in these projects. Also reduce parking and reduce open space requirements. The Facilitate ADU production is actually a complete revisit of our ADU ordinance to help that be more streamlined and effective. getting even more ADUs. Multi-unit housing program adjustments. This is a revisit of our average unit size density incentive program to streamline that and facilitate more housing and get more production out of that program than we've been getting in recent years. Inclusionary housing amendments, we have BAE as a consultant working with us on this. So this involves an economic feasibility study that's looking at different ways of getting inclusionary units, and also it includes a linkage fee for hotels. So when a hotel comes online, it's going to consider the impacts on affordable housing from new hotel staff. And it will look at various other ways of in-lieu fees and different levels of affordability as options for changing our inclusionary housing program. So the Planning Commission reviewed this document last week. They were very concerned about production numbers, especially affordable housing production, and suggested reprioritizing some of the programs. They asked to clarify in the document that some programs are partially completed and ongoing. That doesn't change anything, it just wasn't as clear in the document as they would like that to be, and noted that some wordsmithing and some edits were needed. So we're in process of making those. It doesn't substantively change the content. This is a factual look at 2024, but this is what would be included in the final document. So next steps, the final APR would be submitted to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research in the Department of Housing and Community Development by April 1st, 2025, in compliance with the state reporting requirements. And Ms. Connect actually let me know that the Governor's Office of Planning and Research is now known as the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Gullett. Before we get to comments and questions, if we do all at once, I will open it up for public comment. And I don't have any speaker slips in chambers, so I will move to online. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this item that are online?
We do have one speaker online, Mr. Steve Johnson. You go ahead and speak, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the hard work that community development has done in addressing the issues of housing. I do think there's light at the end of the tunnel as a result of AB 1287, state bonus density, which will allow basically double density to any residential property in the city. You get double density. And the first couple of projects appear to be showing up that will make use of this. One will be heard in 2 days. It proposes 90 units. With the older 50% bonus density, it results in still very favorable 27% of those units will be affordable. Most of those, or many of those, market rate. But if this project that's coming up would instead use AB 1287, double density, they would produce 120 units, 45% of which would be affordable. Most of those affordable by design. I think it'd be helpful if community development would schedule an information session with Planning Commission to make sure everybody fully understands the consequences of state double density zoning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Are there any more members of the public online?
No further hands raised.
Okay, I will close public comment and bring it back to council. And again, you can ask questions and make comments during this time. So I have Councilmember Jordan followed by Councilmember Sneddon.
Thank you. What was that Assembly bill?
1287.
1287, thanks. So I just kind of have one snarky question, and it's just related to just the continuing state policies driven down at the local level. Do we take this opportunity when we're reporting to make our point that state policies as they exist today actually erode and reduce what our local requirement would be for affordable housing? Every bonus density project, if they just follow state legislation, produces less affordable housing than our local requirements would. So do we take this opportunity to make that point?
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, Councilmember Jordan, what you're saying is true. Our main contacts are with the Department of Housing and Community Development. We talk to them about those issues all the time. This is really from the legislature, so I think it's our legislative platform and our contact with our local elected officials. As staff and practitioners, as state law comes, we apply it appropriately as the courts interpret it. But you're exactly right. We have mandates to do these various levels of affordable housing. Moderate income housing is really hard to come by, and the tools we have had in the past, like inclusionary requirements, are less easy to apply than they used to be.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I first have a couple questions. One is, what category are ADUs counted under? Moderate, market, low, very low?
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, Councilmember Sneddon, great question. They're counted as above moderate right now. We had SBCAG do a survey of many households in the county, and they found it's a mixture of space that's not used for housing at all, space that's used periodically, space that is affordable housing. I think the most fair way of categorizing these is above moderate at this point without additional evidence.
I'm actually really happy to hear that, because I think previously when they were counted as moderate or below, that's not what they were renting for. So I think it's a more accurate counting of that. And I think, well, I'll say that for my comments though too. We're going right into comments? Okay, thank you. So in the council agenda report, the sentence that really stands out to me is that it says most permitted units fall within the above market income category with limited approvals in low and very low income. And we've been talking about this for years with that same message that we are, A+ in market rate housing and really failing our community in the low and very low. And it's just unacceptable. It's just gotten to the point, I'm not direct, I'm only talking to you because you're presenting, but it's not directed at you, Mr. Gullett. But this is entirely unacceptable. And we've had the same report for years, before our housing element, during our construction of our housing element, our update, and now. And it seems really clear to me that we need deed-restricted affordable housing at the low and moderate below 120%. And we need to set that as our guiding light, star, goalpost, whatever it is, in all of the housing things that we approach. So when we had the report out from the Affordable Housing Crisis Task Force, when we're talking about or not talking about any tenant protections, when we're talking about housing production, focusing so hard on this below 120%, because that is the area, it seems so clear to me that we are failing our community. I wanted to ask a follow-up question. We had a letter from the League of Women Voters that said that for the Macy's development, that's projected to have 635 market and 54 below market, and that for the Sears development, 399 market and 44 moderate, but didn't list any below. Are those numbers accurate or in the ballpark of accurate?
I believe so, but we have our city planner, Allison DeMosk, here as well.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman and Councilmember Sneddon. The numbers for the Sears project are correct. That's in the pre-application stage. I didn't confirm the Macy's numbers. There are low-income units as part of that, as well as some moderate currently.
So on the Sears, there's none that are below
That's
moderate?
correct. They are not using state density bonus. They're
Okay.
submitting under the city's rules with some inclusionary as the moderate.
Okay, so those two substantial developments are just going to, as the league letter states, increase the gap that we're seeing. So we're going to be even more A++ on that trend with Market in the hundreds of units. I mean, that's like 1,000 units where it's under 100 of those will be below or maybe even just moderate. So again, I'm just going to say it's just unacceptable. I think it's clear we need a deed, a dedicated source of funding. We've talked about it. We talked about it. It's literally part of our housing element that we put the language in there and the intention of it that we need the dedicated source of funding for very low and moderate, for that below 120%. And I still don't see that we have that, and I'm talking to ourselves collectively. We've had opportunities for that. I think this report shows it yet again, that this below 120% is not being served, not being prioritized, and it's literally part of our housing element. I know some of us fought very, very hard to have that sentence in there with that specific number in there, and I just don't see anything in our policies that are like very specifically directing towards that. So even on the slide that says strategies for increasing housing, I didn't write the slide number down. I wish that slide said strategies for increasing affordable housing. It's just not, in my mind, true that we need to be increasing housing. I do not believe in trickle-down housing in this particular community where housing and costs are at such a premium. So I really wish that was our North Star, that we were everything geared towards affordable housing, that nothing just says housing without saying affordable housing in front of it. And I realize that needs to be the will of council. I believe we've made that in the housing element, the will of council, but I think we need to just really, really, really focus there. So, I agree with the Planning Commission comments that maybe we need to be reprioritizing programs, and I would say reprioritizing programs that specifically focus on affordable housing below 120%. And the other things, frankly, can just wait until that catches up. I just don't think we need more programs that are incentivizing market rate housing, and especially at 1,000 new units without taking care of the unmet needs of the low and very low income members of our community. So in the general plan, generally, I'm very excited. We're going to be looking at the open space. Of course, we need to be looking at the safety element. And I think part of that, it's been discussed here and maybe formally needs to be discussed, the looking at what the city assets are in terms of parking lots or other spaces that could be dedicated to affordable housing or for our workforce. I think we lose sight of that below the 120%, and I'll just keep saying it as many times as I can. I'm very happy for the update, and thank you.
Thank you. Member Jordan, you want to make comments, and then Member Santamaria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. So I know you got an earful last week at Planning Commission. I'll just be gentler, I hope. But, I agree with a lot of what Councilmember Sneddon says, but be careful what you're asking for, because I think you're going to hear some numbers as to how to get there in a minute, I think, from Councilmember Friedman. But the strategies to me run up against what we can do versus what the state makes us do. And again, I just cannot just be any more disgusted with the position it puts us in locally, whereas if we didn't have those state restrictions on us, regardless of how many we're producing, we're getting a bigger bang for each one of those production projects than we are when they come through with bonus density projects, period. So if you want to point the finger at somebody who's not doing something, to me, it has to be the state. So just that you had some strategies on there, and you've heard me say this before, the odds program and adaptive reuse program, the bang for the buck there, I think, has been misplaced in those efforts, considering the lack of efforts in either moving along, dragging the houses that are being used for short-term vacation rentals back into the housing stock. We're still sitting on that, looking for some help there, in my case, 5 years later, when I got elected 5 years ago, put that on a list. And also the discussion on FARs. There are things we can affect that will locally prod private developers, not the city, into getting closer to what we want to do. And one of those tools is discussing putting FARs in place. I see the odds whole effort at just a contrast to that effort. The odds will codify a now non-discretionary, discretionary envelope and structure to put stuff in, whereas before with a FAR, we would have left that up to the developer to decide what to put inside that envelope. And that I think is just glaringly absent in our toolkit to help push people, even on these obscene projects where they're only doing 7 or 8% of the type of housing we want, to motivate them to push the limit to make some market rate ones that will be, perish the thought, affordable by design. Despite those percentages for ADUs, I know those are a little gamed by the easy gains that were made by bringing existing illegal housing, such as in garages or granny units, into those numbers. So they weren't really net gain in housing. But I would also say I'm a firm believer in keeping that ADU on that list, but I would just say it's still a slog to get through that problem. I hear so many comments on the ADU process taking a year or a year and a half, when to me, I still say, when's the last time you heard about somebody complaining about an ADU in their neighborhood? That would be never for me, ever, okay? And I know they exist, but they assimilate themselves into a neighborhood so easy, and offer some relief and some control to direct the type of housing we want. So I know conveniently we're here once again a week before, or a couple of weeks before it has to go up to the state. So you heard an earful last week. I'm hopefully giving you lesser of an earful today, but I think one of the complaints I would have just routinely is stuff like this comes up on a timeline and it's right before it has to go somewhere, and it doesn't give you the opportunity to take tangible input and policy direction to go back and say, okay, yeah, we really, whether you're listening to me or Councilmember Sneddon or anybody else, it really doesn't give you the opportunity to go back and play with the document from a policy standpoint. And I think that's unfortunate. So, I'm happy to put in the time and work with you on any of these. It's still a passion of mine, this particular area. So I'd be happy to talk about any of this any other time. And then I think, too, it'd be nice to see a point paper on that AB 1287. It's off my radar, and there's got to be a catch other than what was painted by the public commenter. So I'd like to get out in front of what the catch is to that, rather than it's going to be a really, really good thing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Councilmember Jordan. Councilmember Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman.
I just want to thank our staff first off. Thank you for this really comprehensive report. I think it's, in order for us to move forward, we need to make sure that we have all the facts laid out. I very much agree with what Councilmember Sneddon said. I want to echo everything she said, and I will not repeat it for the sake of time, but a couple of points that I wanted to add, and not necessarily directed to our staff, because I think this is more of a collective city effort, but we, number one, need to facilitate the process of building affordable housing. I do hear from developers in my district that they want to do the right thing, and they do stumble upon the red tape that precludes them from building the units that we need. And I think that we see so many market rate units attempting to come online that when we see those developers that are very willing to build affordable units, we need to jump on it. In my opinion, those need to be a priority, because just like Councilmember Sneddon said, we are falling behind very severely in the need for low-income units. We need to operate with an affordable housing first mentality in mind, because otherwise we are not operating with a local workforce first in mind. When we continue to allow the building of market rate units, they serve a purpose and they're attractive for many reasons, one being because it's Santa Barbara and it's a beautiful place here, that's what it said, is there's always going to be somebody that wants to rent it. And it's true. But 99 times out of 100, that person who rents that market rate unit will not be a person who belongs to our local workforce. And the reason I say that is because much of the struggles that our local economy faces, much of the struggles that even as a city we face with, high turnover rates, not just in local businesses, but all over, really, our city, it's important for us to make sure that we understand that the prioritization of affordable, deed-restricted units is not just a moral stance we want to take because we think it's the right thing. It's simply the practical thing. If we want to stimulate our local economy, if we want workers to be able to afford to work in our city, then we need to do something to help alleviate that. And this report is great, and I think it lays a really good outline for some of the work that we still have ahead of us. But what this report also shows me, it highlights all the more reasons to, as a city council and as a city in general, the need for us to protect whatever remaining affordable housing units are left. It's sometimes it might seem wild to think there's affordable housing units left. Yeah, there's still some, and I know of many tenants in the city who have been in their units for decades, right? And as a result, their rents have stayed low. Now, a lot of these units, like a lot of the units in Santa Barbara, are aging, and we need to make sure that along with protecting that stability that tenants have found in these units by keeping the rents low, by staying there for decades, that we don't forego maintenance and making sure that those buildings are up to code. So all that to say is thank you for this report to our staff. Thank you for the amazing work that you've all put into this. I think as a city, though, we absolutely need to keep in mind that when we talk about anything to do with our housing elements, we need to keep in mind that's our city workers, that's our police, those are our firefighters, those are our baristas, everyone that keeps the service tourist economy going on here. This is who this is for. And the more that we prioritize or allow market rate units to go forward, and the more that we allow developers to say, sure, you can do this, and you don't really have to give us any of the affordable units, the harder it is for us to keep our local economy afloat. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I really do have faith in our council, that in our city in general, that we have the will that it's going to take to move our deed-restricted affordable housing units forward, and to make sure that, as the League of Women Voters pointed out, that we have a permanent funding source for housing. Thank you, Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Councilmember Santa Maria. Councilmember Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry, just habit there. I actually wasn't going to comment on this item, but I think it's an important conversation, and probably important that I weigh in a little bit because we're sort of having maybe a bigger conversation than just the specifics that are of what are in front of us specifically. And I'll start just very briefly with my appreciation as well. It's incredible the amount of work that you all do to put this together, and do really appreciate the opportunity for it to come back to us. On the one hand, I think it's been clear from my comments over the years and my actions on this dais that deed-restricted, affordable housing is a priority for me, if not my #1 priority. However, I will say, and maybe this is where I differ from my colleagues sitting next to me a little bit, is that I am very concerned with a policy approach that looks at any one element of our housing considerations to the exclusion of all the others. And I continue to feel that housing policy generally is so complex that if we silo ourselves to say only this one kind of housing is what we will focus on, only this one kind of housing is what we will allow and facilitate, we risk getting ourselves into a position where, 30 years ago we said no housing at all, and that pendulum swung so far to one direction that we see the consequences of that now. And as I look at what it means to have a comprehensive policy that's effective for the community, I just worry that in focusing so explicitly to the exclusion of other policy ideas and conversations, that we can get ourselves into a situation where we don't have the kind of balance that we need and that's critical. And I look at some of these big projects, let's think about Paseo Nuevo, for example. That's so important for our downtown that we facilitate something there, a housing project there. And I think that we really need to think critically about a holistic picture. And so while affordable housing, deed-restricted housing is my priority, I think the elements that Councilmember Jordan brought up are critical, and certainly conversations that I'm interested in having, because a comprehensive housing policy, I think, is the way that we're going to serve this community, not just for the present, but for generations to come. I don't know what 30 years is going to look like in this city, but I am confident that if we don't have a comprehensive housing policy that considers all kinds of housing development, not one to the exclusion of another, that we will not serve future generations. So, my priorities are still very much in line with Councilmember Sneddon's and Councilmember Santamaria's, but I do think it's important that we take a broad look, and I appreciate that that's what you all are doing with this work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Harmon. I have a few questions, and then I will make some comments. So some of these had come up earlier, but I want to reopen them up because I think some of the discussion today, they're very important in terms of how we prioritize. The adaptive reuse ordinance, when is that scheduled to come back and be completed this year? Because that's huge for downtown.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, it's scheduled in the housing element to be completed by the end of this year. We'll be returning to Planning Commission in early May we got some feedback from them already, and we've been working to refine the ordinance and want to discuss a few things with them in May. And then we would be at council probably late summer with that.
Okay, so that's something that this year, that continues to be a priority for a lot of reasons, for the housing downtown, which we all agree is part of larger issues within our general plan, even in downtown revitalization. Having housing down there is key. On the short-term vacation rentals, again, you said the April start date. We have this, as I understood it, we had the staffing challenges. I think some of it came to housing issues for the new staff we were going to hire. So we couldn't do that, and so now we're also including outside contractor to help with that. So what is the estimated timeline, if we start in April, that we would, within the coastal zone where it's very difficult right now and we're losing units to STRs, what would be the timeline to get that to the Coastal Commission? A year, 2 years?
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, we hope to be at Coastal Commission in a year with it. We want to move fast on it. It's definitely a priority.
Okay, thank you. And then where are we? You might have covered this, but I might have missed it, in the in lieu study that we're doing.
We've been meeting regularly with our consultant. We expect to get an administrative draft either next week or the following week from them. They've done developer interviews and have a really good understanding of our market. So their work product will be of a lot of interest to understand what's happening in our housing market right now. And they're going to be providing recommendations on in lieu fees and the different types of inclusionary.
Okay, so that's coming within the next couple weeks, you said? Is that right, the draft?
Next couple weeks, the draft to staff, and then we would be bringing that to Planning Commission, we expect, for a discussion item in coming months, maybe early summer for that one.
And then so early summer to Planning Commission and then to council in the fall? Would that be a aggressive timeline?
In the pause.
Next year, what I just want an estimated timeline, so don't feel pressure to.
I'd say fall, yeah.
Okay. I don't want to put any pressure and then have it delayed. I'd rather have a realistic expectation in case we don't meet that timeline. Okay, so those are huge. The adaptive reuse, STR, short-term vacation rentals, and the in lieu are all in process, and the goal is those three could have major movement in the second half of this calendar year. Is that a fair statement to say?
That's fair.
Okay. Just a quick question. It's related to our sustainability goals, but housing production, and a constituent brought it up on the project on Milpa Street, the 90 units. There's 70 parking spaces, I understand it, but only 2 for electric vehicle charging. As we try to have these sustainability goals with our housing production as well, are there requirements for new housing for electric vehicle charging stations, or is that completely voluntary?
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, there are building code requirements for electric vehicle charging stations. It's based on a percentage of the parking that is provided for the development. I don't know if 2 is the correct percentage for 70 parking spaces. That's something that will get sussed out during the building permit process.
So that is part of the process. Okay. And then with the La Cumbra, as I understand it, the Sears project is not part of what we're talking about today because they submitted after 2024. So that's why it wasn't included in this report.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, that is correct. They have submitted a preliminary application. I think that did come in at the end of 2024, but it doesn't count towards those numbers because it's still preliminary.
Okay, and so even with that project, it's about 450 units. The Cumber Macy's, about a little less than 700, so we're talking about almost 1,100, 1,200 units. Even with that number of units, and we're not going to see hardly any projects of those size in our city because it's in the future, we would still have a very difficult time meeting our 8,000 units in the cycle, even with 2 kind of one-off projects at the same time.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, those 2 projects, that was like closer to 1,000 units cumulatively. That's about 12% of our total arena. So we would need more, and we don't have the land for projects like that. This is kind of a one-off opportunity to get that many units.
Yeah, and that's where I'm saying is it's going to get to a point when I make my comments, but just 8,000 units, it's very difficult to get that, even when we have these massive projects that are coming in. Just a couple of more, and it gets to both Councilmember Jordan and Councilmember Snedden's points about we're not getting the type of affordables that we need. We're getting very few, if any, almost. And then the issue that if we had just been allowed to use our own local ordinance on say the Macy's project, we would have gotten more affordables. Would it be possible to use the legislative committee that we have to, when that next meeting comes up, and have that discussion there And that way we can contact our legislators about that particular issue, and maybe it's something we could try to fix, where maybe it's something like, if it's state bonus density or the local, whichever is the higher percentage would take precedent. Could we have that discussion at the legislative committee? Because today is not the time to discuss it, since this is looking backwards. Okay. And then, before I have my comments. So just a couple of quick comments, and this gets to the whole point of why we need a dedicated funding source. I think all of us 100% agree with that comment. We're not going to get the affordable units that, very few, if any. And one of the issues so today I was looking at the report, and we have, for this cycle, we have 2,147 required very low income. And here's the challenge, and I don't have an answer for it, but it just speaks to the gravity of the situation. When we talk about affordable housing units, we have excellent partners. I even see one in here today that's coming for the next item, sitting in the audience. But the Housing Authority in particular has been really outstanding, and they have 2 projects that are going on. One is being constructed right now, about 45 deed restricted affordable on La Cumbra. And we just allocated some funding that hopefully they'll go forward with another 45 more on South Hope. Those combined would only equal 90 of the 2,100 units. And for a lot of reasons, they take about $1 million a unit to produce. There's a lot of reasons going into that. And so I said, well, what is 2,147 times 1 million? Put in my calculator. And this is what I got. It's 2,147 e to the 9th. And I was like, I don't even know what e to the 9th is. So I had to Google again to figure out e to the 9th because I was getting confused. And it turns out it's $2.1 billion when you all said to do just the very low income. And then if you add up the low and the moderate, so that's another 1,381 and another 1,441. It's 4,969 affordable units that the state is requiring us to make at $1 million a unit. That's what it costs. These are actual numbers. You could verify it. It comes to be $5 billion. That's the conundrum, and the state's not providing us that funding, and so how are we supposed to, locals, come up and get that funding we need? We've been very creative. We have the Local Housing Trust Fund. We passed Measure I, and we're trying to get more out of that, but we're not able to get there. And it's not a dedicated source, and there's a lot of competing priorities. So it's just important for everyone to keep in mind what the expectations are, and that's $1 million a unit is tough. So we need to come together and find ways, but we need to get projects as they go, because 50 units here, 50 units there is definitely a step in the right direction. But I just don't think that's a realistic number that the state has put on communities when there's no state funding to do that. So it's just, when I'm at e to the 9th in terms of what it's going to cost, it's a big pull. So I'll leave it at that. I appreciate the work that staff's doing and that those 3 ordinances are coming forward. The last thing I will say, and it's kind of leaning more with where Councilmember Hartman and Councilmember Jordan were, is there is a place for market rate. It's not at the expense of. We need to do both. And the FAR discussion is something we should have, whether or not we do it or not. Because if we end up building on lots and we get half the number of units through the AUD program, it's also half the number of affordables as well. Because if you're able to use the same footprint and double the size and go from, say, 40 units for a project to 80, you're going to double the number of affordables that are in there as well. There's a lot more to it than that, but I just want to say that if we need to build units of all types with that. So, but with that, there's no further comments. This is, again, just informational, and hopefully we can put that on the legislative committee, that specific item. and I will close this item for us today. And now we are moving on to item 18. Before I have the clerk read it into the record, if anybody wants to speak to that who's sitting in chambers, there's speaker slips in the back. You can turn them to Ms. McAdoo here. I have a few from you already. And with that, I'll turn over to the clerk to read it into the item and then bring up Ms. Doubles.
Item 18, subject Community Development and Human Services Committee funding recommendations. Recommendation that council approve the fiscal year 2026 and 2027 funding recommendations of the Community Development and Human Services Committee for use of human services funds. Approve the fiscal year 2026 funding recommendations of the Community Development and Human Services Committee for use of community development block grant funds, and authorize the Community Development Director to negotiate and execute grant agreements implementing the funding recommendations subject to the review and approval as deformed by the City Attorney.
Ms. Doubles.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman and City Council members. I am Laura Doubles. I'm the Housing and Human Services Manager for the city, and with me here today is Mr. Dayton Aldridge and Ms. Lindsay Drew Thompson, both Community Development Program Specialists. We'd like to thank you for having us here today to present to you our Community Development and Human Services Committee funding recommendations. So staff's recommendation is A, to approve the fiscal years 2026 and 2027 funding recommendations of the committee for use of human services funds, and then B, to approve the fiscal year 2026 funding recommendations of the committee as well for the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG funds. And C, to authorize the Community Development Director to negotiate and execute these grant agreements, implementing the funding recommendations. Our CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant, is an annual process. HUD is requiring that the city always do an annual action plan every year to show what the city's intention is on what they're intending to fund. HUD requires that the CDBG activities be identified annually in accordance with the city's adopted citizen participation plan. The Human and Public Services grant process is a biennial or every 2-year grant process. Back in October 2024, Council approved a general fund commitment of $726,150 for both fiscal year 26 and then for fiscal year 27 for the human services programs. This 2-year general fund commitment will be finalized during the city's fiscal year 26 budget process, which we just entered into. For CDBG, our funding priorities is homeless assistance, public facilities and infrastructure, decent housing availability, and economic development. For our public services and human services, we have 2 criteria here. The first priority is for programs that help meet basic human needs, specifically food, shelter and housing, medical, which includes physical and mental. And the second priority is proposals that reduce the impact of violence, including the prevention of gun violence and suicide, and or are preventative in nature, and or promote the highest degree of functioning the individual is capable of achieving. And here on our screen is a current picture of our committee members, -2. We have capacity for a 13-member committee, and currently we have 7. These individuals represent a broad range of community interests, and they include representatives from low and moderate income neighborhoods. And they're a pleasure to work with. The city did our staff did a lot of outreach. We did our notices, the advertisements in the Independent and the Voice. Our press releases were all done in both English and Spanish, and we posted a lot on our city website, City News and Brief, on social media. We held a mandatory applicant workshop where our staff was there to answer any questions. And we also provided any other assistance we could with our staff being available to answer any questions as well. Once our deadline closed for the applications, we received 45 public and human services applications and 6 capital or economic development. The requests totaled over 2.9 million, and both the committee and staff reviewed all the applications. We held meetings for 3 evenings to interview these applicants with the committee, and then the committee went into deliberations for it. The committee developed their recommendations by each of the committee members scoring the applications or applicants. Then those scores were averaged, and the final funding recommendations were formulated by an ad hoc of 3 of the committee members and then approved by the full committee. This shows a pie chart with the total available funding sources of $1,872,823. In the blue here, we have the CDBG city's entitlement. The estimation is taken from last year's figure because we don't know it as of yet. The red has the CDBG repayments, and then purple is reprogrammed monies, and then green is human services funds, which that's the amount that the council approved for each year. In our capital and economic development category, we had a total amount of requests coming in at $1,047,250, which far exceeded our available amount of $762,398. In the public and human services category, the total amount of requests was $1,892,246, again exceeding the amount of available at $881,140. So our committee always comes up with a contingency plan because the fiscal year 2026 for CDBG dollars is not known as yet. That comes when the Congress approves the budget, and then we get notified with what amount we're allocated. And so at the time we go through this whole process, because we don't know that amount, we do develop a contingency plan in case it comes in at a variance from last year's amounts. If funding is increased in the public and human services category, the excess available will be distributed equally to the 5 highest scoring priority 1 applicants who did not already receive full funding, and then equally distributed thereafter to the next highest scoring applicants until the excess is depleted. If funding is increased and it's the capital category, the excess available funds will be equally distributed among all the applicants that did not already receive full funding, excluding the applicants that did not receive any funding. If the increase is more than $35,000, then the committee will reconvene to make a revised recommendation. If funding is decreased in our public and human services category, the deficit funds will be divided equally among the 10 lowest scoring applicants, regardless of their priority, and reduced or eliminated until the deficit is completely depleted. If, as a result, the recommendation to a particular applicant is less than the city's $9,000 minimum grant amount, that minimum will then be waived. And if the funding is decreased in the capital category, the deficit funds will be taken from the lowest scoring applicants until deficit is eliminated. So in the event that funds are decreased, all of our grant agreements include language in them that the award amount shall also be reduced accordingly based on the available amount of funding. And as our city administrator, Ms. McAdoo, had mentioned, if the federal government completely eliminates the CDBG allocation for this coming fiscal year, staff recommends that the general fund backfill this funding in accordance with the recommendations of the committee for one fiscal year. This will allow the funded agencies with time to plan. And staff has created a recommendation report. This is available for your review on our webpage, listed here, the link here, and it also available upon request. This contains detailed descriptions of the funding process and also summary of all of the recommended programs. So if council approves today, then our next steps would be to execute those grant agreements. The template agreements and the amendments are included with your staff report, and to submit the CDBG funded projects to HUD for approval. And with that, that ends our presentation. We're here and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doubles. I'm going to open up to questions from my colleagues. First up is Councilmember Jordan, followed by Councilmember Sneddon.
Thank you. So the world's kind of changed since you started this in November of last year, and I'm just wondering, when looking at this list, I can't see any differentiation between what this list looks like every other time I've seen it, and I'm just wondering, was that part of the discussion as you went through this process on what we're doing to specific address, like you heard Jacqueline Inda stand up today and talk about, or is timing just killing our reaction to this?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Jordan. So we definitely go into each of these years knowing that we don't know the allocation. Anything could happen. So that's why we have them develop.
Let me back you up. So I'm not really talking about the allocation. I'm just talking about the need for the allocation. So most of these programs that are on here are ones that I'm familiar with that are in prior to right now, or a static program need going forward. And since January 20th of this year, there have been a dramatic change in the protections needed for fill in the blank, underrepresented members of our community, the services they get, and the stuff like that. So was there an effort made when you got to that point after January 20th, but you'd run through this whole process starting back in November to address that need, not the allocation amount, but just assuming one way or another you're going to get the money. So just addressing where the greatest need was, but it didn't start to emerge from all of this until after the new president was in place.
Councilmember Jordan, if I could maybe just chime in.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there are very strict community engagement processes we have to follow for the CDBG funding allocation. So we wouldn't have been able to change that process in January to sort of revisit the priorities and to change it midstream. So, and it's just an unfortunate way of how the CDBG program requires us to have a certain number of public hearings, and there's a very defined protocol in terms of the announcement of funding availability, what are the priorities, and that has to go out in a certain timeline so we can meet the timelines. But I think with the community services funding, I mean, that's where, which is our general fund dollars, that's where we would have more flexibility. Again, I think, you know, these agencies have now started to count on these funds because we have recommended it and the committee has recommended it. I think we'd be hard pressed to change that midstream right now. But I do think as we're continuing to look at the needs, I think that's something we can evaluate for this next funding cycle.
Thanks. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sneddon.
Thank you. I have a question along those same lines. So I guess the one, thank you, Ms. Doubles and team and committee. This is always so hard. There's always more need than can be met, and it's a very difficult process, an emotional process. So thank you. I do have a question, one that really stands out to me on the capital and economic development is the Cliff Drive Care Center trash enclosure replacement for $225,000, which in the parlance of Councilmember Friedman is a what, E2 times greater than anything else on the list, but seems to me to have much less urgency than, say, Immigrant Legal Defense Center, which I think is what Councilmember Jordan might have been getting to, that maybe the shift. But can you help me with that one? It's a trash enclosure. And I know we have difficult processes and we have a lot of rules and make things much more expensive, but it just seems, if you could help me understand that one.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman and Councilwoman Sneddon. Happy to elaborate on that. And so as City Administrator McAdoo mentioned, there's very specific guidelines on how the funding needs to be expended. And so 65% of the CDBG funds must be used on capital or an economic development, and they could not go towards programs such as Santa Barbara Legal Defense Center. And also with Cliff Drive Care Center, it's a beneficial project because it's able to, it's a need that they have, and then with that, they're able to further their programs for both senior citizens and then for our youth.
Okay, thank you so much. And so then this was in the allotment that had to go to capital improvements, and then all of the requests were met, it looks like. So there was that funding available for those projects. Yeah.
Sorry, except for one. One was not funded. And one project was a little bit underfunded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarification, because that one really does stand out. Okay, thank you.
I will say that it is sometimes challenging to get community agencies to propose capital projects because of the sort of onerous federal requirements and the prevailing wage requirements. So it's very challenging to meet those. So that's why we often are sometimes struggling to find those capital projects. And you might see something, you're like, oh, that doesn't seem like but that's what the agency can make work.
Thank you. And not to call out any particular agency, and I guess I will say thank you, Cliff Drive Care Center, for what you do. Not to, but that, on the contingency plan, though, should we not receive these funds and need to backfill this amount somehow, we would no longer be beholden to the same strict formulas, or we would say that people have counted on this for the 2 years.
If we're using general fund dollars, I think we could revisit that. And so, for example, if it's not CDBG specific, we would not be beholden to the 65% for capital improvements. I think we'd want to talk with those agencies specifically about those projects and understand the implications, but that might be an opportunity for the council to potentially reallocate those, if we're using general fund dollars, reallocate those dollars to other service providers. But we will definitely, as we get more information, come back to council and have conversations around that.
Thank you. And then I guess that's just one last question, is that we've sort of moved to this 2-year model so that people could count on things, but now we're in a position where we can't ourselves count on things. So might we revisit the 2-year cycle versus the 1-year cycle, or if you have ideas on that?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Sneddon. Right now, we couldn't change that because we already started this whole process and we put the notice of funding availability out for 2 years and we're awarding for 2 years. So that's what the agencies actually even put their applications in for. We could revisit that if you'd like to in the future cycles, but because this is the first year of that 2-year cycle, I would suggest maybe next year to take that up.
Excellent. And I think that's a good idea because we may still be in an uncertain situation at that time. So if just making a note of that we might want to revisit that. Thank you so much for the work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open up to public comment, I had one question. It's actually a great segue with the 2-year. I was wondering if we had any feedback from the applicants and then just from the staff on if the 1-year or the 2-year was more efficient, or if it helped hiring, those types of things, or if it didn't really matter either way, if there's any feedback that we've had from it since we've gone through a full cycle.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem, for that question. We actually did get a lot of very positive feedback. I don't know, Lindsay, if you had anything maybe you could share with what some of them told you.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. As far as the grantees or the applicants, they like it because it is more dependable, knowing that we're going into this new kind of reality of not knowing what we're going to get with the CDBG allocation. That can change, but previously they said that they like it because they can they know what to expect moving forward, and they're able to make better decisions for planning purposes. Our committee has shared that they've also liked the 2-year cycle because it is pretty, we require a lot of our committee during the January and February months. They attend 2 meetings each night, and some of these meetings can last about 5 hours. And so it's a big ask of our committee members, and so I think that they've also enjoyed the 2 years, and for staff, it has reduced staff time as well. And so I think overall it has been a good move, but it would be 2 years from now, a year from now, depending on how the federal government moves within their own budget. I think it might be worth revisiting.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Just interesting when you make those shifts it takes a couple of years to see how they actually play out. So good to hear that it's been relatively positively viewed by both the applicants and our staff. Federal government future throws a wrench in it, but we'll adjust. All right, now I'm going to open up to public comment. I have 3 in chambers. Liam Gabb, followed by Susan Rendon, followed by Danielle Garcia. Come on up to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, council members. Hey, staff. My name is Liam Gallo. I was appointed to the Community Development and Human Services Committee, I think about 2 years ago. I represent from the Homeless Services side. As you know, the members have certain designations, and so that's mine. I do not speak on behalf of any of my members or any of the staff today. Nor was I asked to come by any of them. I come of my own volition and to express a personal opinion, or a couple of them. The chief among them is a deep appreciation for the staff that you have aligned to this effort. I have done some grant making with a different foundation, and professionally I administer grants and I seek grants, and so I can say this with a confidence that they steward a thorough process, and they're very competent people. And aside from that, because I could talk about that at length and specific, they are each of them, and I'm discovering this in Dayton too, who's new, but Lindsay and Laura, over the time that I've spent with them, I've spent a little bit longer time, they are great examples of public servants, period. I admire them for their grace and their deep patience and the endurance. So the 5-hour meetings that they're talking about, they're there too, all 3 of them. And that's after their workday, and it's after receiving comments from all of the people seeking grants and the people that currently have grants. And especially in this political moment, it's a wonder that they're still standing. So I just, I want to say that first as a tee up for the next thing, which is I will, as a citizen of Santa Barbara, need you to be very protective of them as facilitators and stewards of this funding pool as we go forward. And I need you to consider not just sustaining the existing funding for this, your commitment through the general fund, but an expansion of it. It's required. I think that I'm very happy to feel that there are some like-minded folks over there about, okay, this is a critical moment, we need to rise to it, and you can. With an increase of funding, with an increase maybe of staff, I know that I can speak for myself. If I need to do the process instead of every 2 years, but every 1 year to be more responsive, I could. So I would like for you all to find ways to improve the process if you can, commit more funding, and give high fives and hugs and many thanks to the staff that facilitate the process. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments and for the feedback on our wonderful staff. Truly appreciated. Ms. Renahan, Susan Renahan.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, members of council. I just wanted to come here today from a place of gratitude and thank you all for your partnership. Want to express our gratitude to the members of the Community Development and Human Services Committee for all their hard work and for the staff who we are very grateful to for all of the questions they answer and all the support they provide. We are grateful for the opportunity to apply for funding for our home repair program. This program provides critical health and safety repairs to low-income homeowners in Santa Barbara. It's an ongoing need, and there are many benefits to this program. One benefit is that we prevent things like falls. We prevent people from losing their housing stability and from having bad outcomes, including losing their housing, becoming homeless. We also are able to maintain the very limited stock of affordable housing that we do have in our city. We also build community with this program because we bring in volunteers and we allow people to participate in repairing and beautifying their neighbor's home and really helping people understand the need for affordable housing in our community. So thank you for prioritizing this program. I just wanted to bring you the update that we currently have 10 projects in our pipeline. 5 that are in progress, 4 that have been approved by our volunteer-led Family Services Committee, and 1 application waiting to be approved. So this is an ongoing critical need in our community, and we are grateful to you for providing us the opportunity to partner with you for this funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, and our final in-chamber speaker is Danielle Garcia.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you, for the work that you do for our community, for the work that you as staff do, and for the committee. We're grateful so much for everything you do. My name is Danielle Garcia. I am the business administrator for Cliff Drive Care Center, so I might be able to answer a little bit of questions for you. No, you're fine. I might be able to answer some of your questions. Cliff Drive Care Center began when Avis Snellenberger saw a rising need in Santa Barbara as working parents needed a loving place for their children to be cared for during the workday. And so she founded Cliff Drive Day Nursery in 1963, which was a year before the federal Head Start program began and 10 years before California community care licensing began. At that time, the program cared for children from birth to entry into elementary school, and it eventually expanded to include after-school and holiday and vacation care for elementary school students in town as well. This program eventually changed names to Cliff Drive Care Center, and it grew to be the largest child care facility in Santa Barbara County. We now serve an average of 11 children ages 0 to 2, 58 children ages 2 to 5, and 37 children ages 5 to 12 every weekday. In 1979, we added our senior luncheon, which provides nutritious meals and educational speakers for Santa Barbara. We realize that seniors need the connection to one another as they enter a time of life that often is isolating. And we provide an opportunity for seniors to connect with one another and engage with a wide variety of topics while enjoying a meal cooked by our cordon bleu trained chef and her team. Cliff Drive Care Center serves an average of 65 seniors in our dining room, plus makes deliveries to homebound seniors every other Thursday. So our grant proposal was to replace our existing 120 square foot trash enclosure with a new 282 square foot masonry and wood trash enclosure that will house all of the dumpsters and recycling and food waste cans that are required. The existing structure is too small to hold all of the cans, and some of them are currently stored outside of the structure, which is now contrary to the requirements from the state and the city. So by replacing the trash enclosure, we are able to provide the children and seniors in our program safety from exposure to the recycling, green waste, food waste that is currently adjacent to our parking lot and outdoor play area. And both programs then are able to continue to serve the children and seniors of Santa Barbara County, as we will be able to continue to care for and feed the 116 children and 60 to 75 seniors every 2 weeks. Because we are in need of a safe location for the trash that service creates. We're so grateful for this grant, which provides the opportunity for us to complete this project and continue to serve the members of our community through this new upgraded enclosure. And we're grateful for all of the work that you do for our community. Thank you.
Councilmember Sneddon.
I did want to genuinely say thank you for your application and for explaining. And I think this really does give an example of the wisdom of our community and staff. And I appreciate that you're here in person and very happy that these funds are going to this very worthy program.
Thank you so much.
Okay, before we go over to comments, is there anybody online who wishes to speak to this item?
No hand raised online at this time.
All right, I will close public comment and turn over to council members. And Member Sutton, you still had your light on. Did you want to speak? And also I'll turn it over to Councilmember Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. So I know this is like a huge work effort every year, so thank you to staff and all the volunteers that are involved with that. Like everybody else, I think I'm just hyper frustrated with the way the world has changed since January. And with it, and despite that, I know, I'm, if not really familiar, at least a little familiar with all the names on the list, and I know that they, if not directly, they tangentially also accomplish working in this new world of change too. And if you take away a little bit of money here, they're going to backfill it from somewhere else, and it's just another degradation of the overall services. So, but when you can walk out the door and walk to a block or two that way and be told you're in a high fire hazard area now, I think maybe one of the takeaways here is to be extra cautious on cementing this process in the years of presidential elections, on that time period from November to January of somebody being in place that drastically affects, sort of in the background of this, but in the foreground of the actual damage that it does to the same customers that are on here, and if there's a way to remedy that and massage it in those particular times, or then maybe it's something to look at. It's more work and less pay when I dump the problem your way. But it just, I think we're all still fresh in the wounds of every day. The hits just keep on coming. And I'm pretty comfortable that many of the entities on that list are feeling it too. And could they have used the money from something else, that is more directly a immediate need right now, rather than being locked into that? And is there a way then, when we have those things happen, to make that appeal and to move the funds sideways for their operations? So, but otherwise, happy to support everything else. And I get the timing issue, and it's unfortunate. And it is part of life, I guess. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Any other speakers before I step in? All right, so I will just make some comments and then we'll entertain a motion. First, this is even more funny, is that my two sons, they're both in high school. One is about to graduate in a couple months. But when they were 2 years old, they started out right at Cliff Drive. And it was and continues to be just an exceptional organization. And for many years, going there, I found out that former Mayor Hal Conklin was a major contributor, both in his time that he gave to it, and I believe his children went there as well. And so one of my favorite memories is we'd show up every year for Halloween, and Hal would be dressed up and just with all the kids around him every year. So I want to take a moment just to remember Mayor Conklin and his involvement with that in many organizations. And that gets to what Councilmember Jordan was saying, when you have a federal government that doesn't really have a plan in how they're cutting services. And if you look at this whole list, and I encourage everyone to do it, you have everything ranging from housing, sexual assault, prosecution, and to senior services, childcare, food services, mental health. And this is just funding, and these organizations do it much more effectively and efficiently than if the government could do it themselves. And so if that funding gets cut, it actually has an increased cost because those services are either going to be backfilled by the city and we have to decide if there's services we're going to cut, or they're just not going to get done and there's going to be costs on the other side of not providing all those services. So I think it's short-sighted if the CDBG gets shut down by the administration. But with that, I just want to say to all the organizations, you all do outstanding work for the community. And it's not just the services you provide, but it's the human connection because each and every one of you has outstanding staff that make those personal connections with with everyone from our infants to our seniors and everybody in between. So this is generally, those issues aside on the unknowns from the federal government, this is one of the highlights of serving on council is to be able to support all these organizations. So I am happy to move this or support this. And with that, is there a motion? Member Sneddon.
I'd be very happy to move this staff recommendation, and thank you so much for your time and commitment and to the committee as well.
And is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Harmon. And so can we
We have a motion from Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Harmon to approve the recommendations as made by staff. You could go ahead and vote, please.
Passes unanimously by all members present. Thank you all. So now we are on to a public hearing, and it's only one more item so we can continue going. So can I have item 19 read into the record, please?
Yes, item 19, public hearing for a 5-year consolidated plan for use of federal CDBG and home funds. Recommendation that council conduct a public hearing to obtain input on the city's 5-year consolidated plan for use of community development block grant and home investment partnership funds for program years 2025 through 2029, which includes the annual action plan for program year 2025-2026.
All right, and Ms. Doubles, you are up again.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. I'm going to actually turn this one over to Mr. Dayton Aldridge, and he'll give you the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. All right, so today we have our public hearing for our 5-year consolidated plan for the use of the federal community development block grant and home funds that were just discussed by Ms. Doubles. So what are the community development block grants? They are meant to develop viable urban communities by providing decent and affordable housing, a suitable living environment, and economic opportunities, principally for those people of low to moderate income. We also have the HOME program, or the Home Investment Partnership Program. This program is meant for development and rehabilitation of affordable rental and ownership housing for low and moderate income households and rental assistance. The purpose of the consolidated plan is that it is a HUD mandate, or the Housing and Urban Development mandate for community development and block grant funds. It requires a study of housing and community development needs, with a focus on low and moderate income persons and special needs populations as defined by HUD. These special needs populations include people with disabilities, the elderly, and our homeless population. The consolidated plan prioritizes the use of approximately $4.3 million in community development block grant funds and $2.5 million in home entitlements. It is meant to outline performance goals and to guide the city on its planning for the next 5 years. And the 5 years that this consolidated plan incorporates is 2025 through 2029. There is a big emphasis on citizen participation and consultation when developing the consolidated plan. To accomplish this, we held 3 community input workshops at various regions of the city. We had one at the United Boys and Girls Club on the west side. We held one in the MLK room of the East Side Library. And we had our final meeting at the Community Development Office in the David Gephardt meeting room. All of these were live streamed on Zoom and were also provided with live translation using the city's Wordly system, which provides translation in up to 150 languages. And these community input workshops were done using a tool called Mentimeter, which is a live survey software. So we were able to conduct a live survey with the community participants and use that to foster conversation. Also part of the citizen participation and consultation, we interviewed the stakeholders who serve low and moderate populations, specifically the various agencies who work with the homeless, housing, public services. We also consulted with neighboring jurisdictions and those involved in the economic development space. We also conducted a resident survey, which was put out over The Voice and was done in English and Spanish, and we were able to get about 300 community responses from that survey. It was a very extensive survey with over 40 questions, specifically talking about the best ways that residents would want to see these funds used. So the main part of the consolidated plan is the needs analysis, which goes through the various different needs our city has for these funds. Specifically housing, we looked at the availability, the cost, the age of stock, and et cetera of housing. We looked at households with disproportionately greater needs, and some of the areas that this was broken down was by race and by income. And for public housing, we examined the available units, the number of vouchers, and the current wait lists. When talking about homelessness, we relied on the point in time count to give us a number of the sheltered versus unsheltered homeless population. For our non-homeless special needs population, we looked at those people with disabilities, the elderly, those suffering or fleeing from domestic violence, and others. And we also looked at our non-housing community development needs, which centered around public facilities and infrastructure. So the findings from this report are overall the needs remain the same. 32% of renters face a severe cost burden, which HUD defines as spending over 50% of your income, monthly income on rent. We do have a significant homeless issue. There was a rise to 955 in the most recent point in time count for the city of Santa Barbara. And there is a need for improved public facilities, specifically parks, sidewalks, and lighting. And also, a new priority area has been identified. This new priority area is community development needs and services to support childcare centers and/or programs that provide childcare, community centers or agencies that provide youth educational, recreational, and/or senior programs, and/or health centers that provide mental health services. All activities benefit 51% or greater low and moderate income person. So here we have our 6 priority areas with the new one I just read highlighted at the bottom. Our 5 prior priorities, and this is in no particular order. Homeless assistance, decent housing, public facilities and infrastructure, economic development, planning for housing and community development, and then our new one, community development needs and services. Another part of this consolidated plan is the annual action plan. This is a HUD requirement for the city to receive these entitlement plans. And it essentially identifies the activities that will be undertaken to support the 5-year plan in 1-year increments. The Community Development Human Service Committee recommendations proposed today by Ms. Doubles, that will be the first year of the annual action plan in the consolidated plan. So this being the public review hearing for the consolidated plan, The plan is now available on the city's website. The public review period goes from March 19th through April 20th. And the final adoption and submission to HUD will be done by us by May 15th. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman and Council.
Thank you for the report. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Sneddon.
Thank you. And thank you for this. It's really gratifying to see that slide 12, where those are exactly the priorities that I've been talking about. And so it's really great to see that that has a department and a highlight, and really especially the child care center needs. Really happy to see that identified and on the list. So I had a question about home funds or CDBG also, but is there an opportunity, can the in lieu fees also go into these funds? Can that be part of the home funds, or are these very specifically allotted to us?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman and Council Member Sneddon. Sorry. No, actually, home is totally a separate entitlement that comes directly from the federal government, from HUD. So our in lieu fund or fees, inclusionary fund, that's a local source. And that actually has been determined more recently with the Housing Trust Fund to be the source for that fund's operating costs. So, yeah, it's totally different.
It seems like these same priority areas.
Yes, the Councilmember Sneddon, the priority areas are very similar, but because these are federal funds that have a lot of restrictions on them, we keep them segregated and utilized differently, and so there's a different process for the home funds.
And so then these, I guess my question would be, our contingency plan for these funds?
I'm sorry, for which funds?
Whether CDBG and the home funds, if they're federal funds, they might also be at risk.
Right. So the CDBG funds, those were what the contingency plan was for. The CDBG and also our human services allocation that you guys approved. Now the home funds are different. The home, actually, we have chosen to put towards tenant-based rental assistance in the past. And so those are contracts that we have with 3 local agencies that provide those services for us. So what would happen is if those funds came in at less, it would be that we would have to probably fund those programs at a little lesser level.
Okay. I guess what my question is, because this is the public hearing for a 5-year consolidated plan.
It's not actually on the funding.
Okay.
It's just the plan and the priorities. So just the council is just setting the priorities today. So the actual allocation of the funds happens as part of the budget process and as part of the approval of the contract. So this is simply to set the priorities. It's a required process so that we can actually receive the funds.
I'm so glad you clarified that. So I 100% agree with the priorities. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Santa Maria.
Thank you. I had a quick question about the home funds. So I know we talked about there being restrictions around them. Could you share a little bit about what those restrictions on those funds are? And in other words, like what can we use? So I know you mentioned in past years you've used them for rental assistance programs. I guess 2 questions and this 1 question. But one would be, what are those agencies that are providing those services for the city currently? And 2, what other types of services could we potentially use them, or what are some restrictions, what we can't use it for?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Santa Maria. Yes, the home funds have very strict guidelines on what they can be used for too. One of them is the tenant-based rental assistance program. We actually contract with the Housing Authority, the Transition House, and New Beginnings that administer those programs for us. So we do give a contract to each of those with a certain amount of money. It's usually, I think, every 2 to 3 years, depending on when they kind of run out and they need more money. Home was basically put into place by the federal government to really assist home development, right? It was basically for providing assistance to either home ownership, down payment assistance, basically developments of affordable housing. That could include acquisition and rehab work. And then, of course, there's a certain element that goes to the administration of that fund for staff to basically administer it and to monitor those units every year, and also the programs, if we did TBRA, to make sure that the income levels are always in line with what is acceptable for HUD.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up question, you mentioned the home funds were primarily to help the path to ownership, correct? And building affordable housing, did I get that correct? Or?
Not so much just home ownership, it's mostly development of affordable housing.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Okay. And so could you give us an example of other programs that we could use home funds for? Not necessarily ones that the city has done before, but just maybe some that, what's the extent of this?
I will just say for Councilmember Santa Maria, in prior agencies I've worked in, it has been used for transition age youth as subsidies, youth who are aging out of the foster care system, so ages 18 to 25, to help them with rental assistance and programs and services to transition into independent living out of foster care. That's one just sort of use that I've seen. Development, so development of affordable housing units. So as if there's an allocation in a year, or we get more money using that towards, potential capital project. But because it is a set amount each year, it is good to use it, for contractual services for things that are ongoing, because we generally know it happens. And then if we get more in 1 year, that's where we might consider, let's put that towards a capital project or something like that.
Gotcha. Final question, what are things that we cannot use the home funds for?
So that would be more like human service programs, capital projects such as what we are doing with different nonprofits.
Would we, so I guess, maybe I'll pose a question. Could we use it, so example, like our CityNet outreach contract, that probably would not be an eligible expense because it's a service provision, but like if we were building permanent supportive housing units, we could use home funds towards that. So it's more the actual construction and less the services that are being provided in the building. It's like access to housing, I think, is a good way to think about it.
Yes.
Okay. But didn't you mention that we could not use them for capital improvement projects?
For nonprofits, such as we did with the CDBG. Yeah.
Got you. Okay, perfect. Those are all my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So now I'm going to open the public hearing and take public comment. Are there any members in chambers that wish to speak to this item? Not seeing any, I will move to online. Are there any members of the public online who wish to speak to this item?
No hands online at this time.
All right, I will close the public hearing and now turn it back to my colleagues for comments and a motion. Councilmember Snedden.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Great. A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Santa Maria. And I'll just say thank you to our staff. This again highlights the valuable partnership we have with the federal government, and hopefully that will continue. And so with that, Mr. Clerk.
We have a motion from Councilmember Snedden, seconded by Councilmember Santa Maria, to move the recommendation as made by staff. Go ahead and vote, please.
Passes unanimously by all members present. Thank you, everyone. And now we are on to council staff communications and council member engagements. Councilmember Snedden.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Frieden. I continue to meet with members of the Ocean Collective, in communication also with members of City College in developing those programs. I participated in Monroe Science Night and was very happy to see members of the Water Resources Division there representing and interacting with students. So that was fun to see. I attended the VADA Draw fundraiser, and I want to say it was nice to see you, Pro Tem Friedman, as president of the local League of Cities event. That was a nice event and uplifting, and congratulations.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I attended last week the town hall hosted by Senator Monique Limon and, our Senator, I said Senator, right? Sorry. Our Senator Monique Limon and Assembly Member Greg Hart at La Cumbre Junior High. And it was a really interesting experience to be able to witness those activists speak, and then also being able to interact with the Sable employees outside the theater. It gave me a greater perspective on the situation. And then I also participated in the public town hall meeting in San Roque, going over what potentially could be some sort of historical designation for that area. That was really educational. And I attended the opening of the Trek biking shop in Goleta, formerly known as Bicycle Bob's, if you all remember that. And attended the NAACP meeting, spoke to some SBCC students, went to the League of Cities Channel Islands dinner, and great job. Mayor Pro Tem Friedman, you really handled the crowd well. Let's see. I then also yesterday attended the Rotary Club's fundraiser at the Gala Restaurant and Winery, and also the Housing Authority's Family Self-Sufficiency graduation. And I also want to give my condolences to the family of Raquel Villa Mendoza. I'm sure most of us remember Raquel. We met her quite a few times. She was very active. She was 94 years old when she passed away. But she's going to be really missed. It's just hard to believe I'm not going to see her around town pushing her chihuahuas in the little stroller that she had. That was really iconic for her. And then also my friend Patrick Blood passed away, and I just want to give him and his family my respects. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gutierrez and Councilmember Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Friedman. First off, attended the League of California Cities Channel Islands Division dinner, and must echo my colleague's sentiments. He did a great job. It's great to see one of our fellow council members and Mayor Pro Tem doing the thing up there. And then also attended the 15th Annual Radius Real Estate and Economic Forecast last week. Thank you.
Thank you. And first, thank you for the feedback on the League of Cities, Channel Counties meeting. It was great that you were all there. It's a great time to do one division of business, but to get to meet council members from throughout the tri-counties. And it was well attended. And thank you to our neighbor Goleta for hosting the first one this year. And you did an excellent job, so I want to give a shout out to City of Goleta. And then also attended the Radius Economic Forecast and the Family Self-Sufficiency Awards, which is a great event every year put on by our Housing Authority and all the members of the community that go through that program that really learn economic development for themselves and work towards a goal, and they become economically self-sufficient. Many of them go on to start businesses in the community here, and it's just wonderful to see those stories and appreciate it. So with that, we are adjourned.